Hello, folks. How are we? Can people let me know if you can hear or see me okay? Just in the chat? Great. That's good news. Okay, well, we got 2 minutes left until we're going to kick off. So hold your horses, relax, grab a cup of tea, and we're going to start very soon. In the meantime, you can look and take a guess where I am. Yeah, in terms of the low res, I'm going off my webcam on my computer, so um, we'll see. I don't have like the proper camera setup. It could also be a connection thing on your side. I've got pretty good internet here. Just a quick heads up, there's about a 10-second delay from when I talk to when you guys will receive it. So when you type in a question, I might not see it straight away. Just might take a couple seconds. Mostly relevant for the Q&A at the end, which I'm really looking forward to doing with you guys. But just a good one to know. Alrighty. It has now just hit 7 p.m. in France, 6 p.m. in the UK, 10 a.m. in California, and I don't really know the rest of the other time zones. But let's kick off. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started with this really exciting webinar. So we got loads of people, and I'm sure that lots of people are going to be joining away. I've been really looking forward to this webinar for a while. And the title of it, of course, is How to Overcome Budget Constraints and Save Up for Van Life, no matter your financial situation. Because truly, this lifestyle is totally possible for so many people. It saves you a bunch of money while living in the van. I've been doing it for years and years and saved up lots of cash by doing so, and is really can be very affordable. You don't need to spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Speaking of which, I have a few kind of fun things to share throughout this webinar. Just check what I found earlier on. I found this van. I was on this website, Explore Van X, and Rogue Van Company, who's an awesome company, have a van for sale there for $750,000. I kind of saw this and I thought it was super relevant for this webinar. Completely mind blowing. I couldn't even imagine spending $750,000 on a van, but that thing is pretty amazing. Go check it out on explorevanx.com. I imagine that's not why you're here. Why you're here is to hopefully build a van a hell of a lot cheaper than that. That is without doubt the most expensive van that I've ever seen in my life. I saw they put it up for sale there recently. Cool. All right. Well, let's kick off. We got lots to walk through today. Lots of things that I'm really excited to go through. So what are we going to be covering today? We're going to start off the webinar by going over the entire costs of van life. So how much does the van cost? How much does the van conversion cost? What are the hidden costs? And then how much does life on the road cost per your kind of different types of spending habits? So you're going to get a really well-rounded view from the outset of how much the entire lifestyle kind of costs. And then we're going to go into how to save up for the van life, for the van conversion. We're going to go over some different strategies. So specifically, we're going to be looking at cutting your expenses. So how to set up a budget and some really cool tools that we can use to do that. How to downsize and sell off some of your possessions in order to prep for van life. We're going to look at how to increase your income for anybody. This is not just like if you have, a PhD or a master's. These are going to be really easy ways that anybody can increase their income in order to save up for van life. We're going to look a little bit about financing, so taking on debt in order to buy a van or a vehicle and what's involved in that. We're going to look at moving to a low cost of living location in order to save up for a van as well. It can be a really useful thing to move somewhere for a while with a low expenditure and then move back to do your van conversion. And then finally, number 6, we're going to move into how to save thousands and thousands of dollars on your van build. So we got, honestly, so much really, really exciting things to cover today. So who is this webinar for? Well, the webinar ultimately is for people who have been dreaming of van life, but they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the costs associated with buying the van, building the van, and sustaining a life economically on the road. I mean, how can you actually live on the road full time for years and years if that's your desire? And there are well-trodden paths in which we can do this. So that's what this webinar is hopefully going to teach you a little bit more about. So if you're looking to escape the 9-to-5 life, get into nature, reduce your stress, save some money, lower your expenses, all these reasons are reasons that I got into it too, then this webinar is for you. Because van life isn't just a lifestyle. The reason I got into it was because of the nature specifically and my love of the outdoors. But it's not just for those reasons. These days, more than ever, it's a financially savvy move. More people than ever are getting into van life in order to make financial savings, because you can expect to save between $12,000 and $20,000 per year just by simply living in a van, which is really, really big savings, actually. So I suppose it's time to introduce myself. I am Shane Monks O'Byrne. I'm just checking on the feed to make sure that we are all good. And we are. It looks like we're all coming through okay. I am Shane Monks O'Byrne, an Irish fellow who has been living in this lovely van for quite some time. I did my first van conversion in 2017 when I traveled from Canada to Mexico and then all the way back. It was a fantastic trip. It took loads and loads of months out to be able to do it. And it was in just a small van conversion. It was in that little van you can see in the bottom left. And that photo there was taken in Yellowstone National Park. But this van was very, very basic inside. I literally just I built a very basic bed, built a basic kitchen unit. It was quite cute, but for long-term living, definitely a little bit challenging. I came back after this amazing trip all around the United States. It was really centered on the national parks. And I came back and I went back to my desk job as an engineer. Came back to Ireland when I finished that trip in 2017. My job was fine. It paid reasonably well and it was reasonably mentally stimulating, but something just didn't sit terribly right with me. I think I had this real taste of nature, of the outdoors, of the freedom of van life, and I just knew that I needed to get back into it. Something wasn't sitting well with me. So in December 2018, I watched a movie, which I'm sure many people here have seen, called Free Solo with this guy, Alex Honnold. So this movie, Alex free solo climbs up El Capitan in Yosemite. And the whole movie is kind of based on this. This is a very crazy type of climbing. I'm a climber, but I don't do this kind of climbing. It's a little bit too crazy for me. But in the movie, Alex had been living in his van for 9 years, I believe it was. And Alex was not short of cash. He wasn't doing it to save a bunch of funds. He was doing it really just to get into nature. He didn't need to live in a van per se. He just loved everything that was associated with it. And that movie really hit me, I think, as a climber and as somebody who just loves vans, loves the outdoors. I came out of that movie in December 2018. And literally the next day, I set up my New Year's resolutions for the next year. I sat down and I was like, okay, the next year, I have to build a van as quickly as possible using the limited funds that I had and start moving into the van full time and start traveling about. So I dedicated my start of 2019 to building Beans, which is this fellow right here and the van in that photo there. And I've been living in Beans ever since full time. So over 4 years now. And it's been so, so amazing. And everything that I ever could have dreamed of, honestly. Beans has all the bells and whistles. And I was very, very conscious when I was building out Beans that I was doing it in a financially savvy way. Let me go back, actually. I feel like it'll give you a little bit of a video on the inside as well. It's kind of cute. Oh, go on there. Go on there. This was taken during the snow. I live in a lot in snowy places, so I knew I'd been spending a lot of winters in beans. So I built it with loads of insulation, really, really warm place. And where I am now, in fact, is a very, very cold place. It frequently gets down to like -20 degrees. But after I built beans, I did loads of traveling all around Europe. I traveled to the northernmost tip of Norway and saw some beautiful northern lights, like that photo in the top left. Went to this island archipelago in Norway too, called Lofoten, where these snowy mountains just kind of come up out of the sea, which is that center photo. Traveled all around Ireland, which is those cute little cottages in the bottom right too. If you haven't been to my home country, do come. You're very, very welcome. The cottages are extremely cute and the people very nice. And I've done all this amazing traveling with my van. It's been fantastic. But for the last 2 years, I've been situated in a very special place in the French Alps called Chamonix. Being like a big mountaineer, alpinist, ski mountaineer, these kind of things, Chamonix is kind of mecca for the mountains, is where alpinism was born. And very aptly, it's also mecca for van life in Europe. The amount of people who live in vans in this tiny little place is truly astronomical, and there's such an incredible community of people here. I'm actually running a workshop next month, like a 4-week course, teaching people how to build vans in Chamonix Valley. So certainly the van has just enabled me to do so much, and it's been, really added to my life so much. And since 2019, I've been teaching people how to build vans full time. That's my job. I run thevanconversion.com, where I've got some books, some courses, got the blog, got a pretty big newsletter. My work's been featured in places like the Sunday Times, the Independent, BBC, stuff all over the place. So it's been a really amazing adventure for me. So here I am to try and show you guys how you can do it too on a budget, because that is exactly how I built my van. I didn't have all the funds in the world. I needed to get really smart about how I wanted to go about building this exact van that I'm in right now. So that's what I'm going to share with you. Just before I do, let me go down here, check on the chat. We are all good. Cool. So stick around to the end of the webinar, of course, and we've got loads and loads of tools that we're going to be referencing throughout this webinar. We're going to be looking at supplies lists for different types of builds. We're going to be looking at an expense planner. We're going to be looking at some different van life budgets for life on the road. We have a downsizing tool. We got a bunch of basically stuff to show you. And for everybody who's in this webinar too, we're going to be sending you out just via email after this webinar a Vanlife saver tool, which is really, really cool. I'm going to demo it later on, but it's basically going to show you how long exactly it's going to take until you can buy your van, and how long exactly until your van conversion is completed, given the funds that you have. So it's a super cool tool. So stick around to the end and you can see how to get access to all of those things. So let's hop in now and look at the starting part of the webinar, which is how much does the entire thing cost? The conversion, the van, the hidden expenses, and life on the road. And we're going to start with how much does the van itself cost. So at thevanconversion.com last year, I did a very, very big survey. We surveyed hundreds and hundreds of people, and we found that the average cost of the base vehicle, the van, for conversion was €9,000, about $10,000. Now, it was a Europe-focused study. In North America, used vans are typically a bit higher. They're a bit more expensive than in Europe. So a Sprinter van will set you back between $20,000 and $27,000, a ProMaster $9,000 to $20,000, and a Ford Transit between $10,000 and $20,000. On average, in the USA, most people will spend $14,500. So about €9,000 in Europe, $14,500 in the USA. And this is if we buy a used van. Now, I found that 94% of people do buy used vans. Only 6% of people actually buy brand new vans. And that's because they're pretty bloody expensive. The average price of the 5 most popular vans for conversion in North America is $41,000. It is 3 to 4 times more expensive to buy a new van than to buy a used van. If we look at the most expensive, we have the Mercedes Sprinter coming in at $50K for the newest model this year. But then we have some cheaper models like the Chevy Express, or even like a tier down, the Nissan NV, coming in at $32,000. But they're a lot more expensive. And as I said, only 6% of people we found actually buy new vans. So most people will be going for used. I saw this really interesting study from move.org, which I just thought was quite interesting. During COVID, lots of people were moving into vans full time. I think a lot of people were just getting really sick of being quarantined and they wanted to get out and change the perspective up. So back, I think it was in 2021, move.org did this survey where they were like, okay, how much does it cost per square foot to live in a van versus to live in, say, a house? They found a van on average in the USA is $268 per square foot, whereas in the most expensive metro cities, it's $463 per square foot. Living in a van roughly equates to living in Denver, apparently. Now you know. Okay, we've looked at how much the base vehicle costs. You can expect to spend about $14,500 on the base van. So how much does a van conversion cost? Well, in that same study that I did last year, I found that the average cost to convert a van was €8,500, with most conversions coming in between €4,000 and €10,000. Now, that's in Europe. In the USA, most people will spend between $5,000 and $15,000 converting a van, with a third of people spending less than $5,000 to convert a van. That's a really good stat. A third of people will spend less than $5,000 to convert their van. That gives us a lot of hope, because it just shows that it is possible to convert a van on a budget. You do not need to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. There are so many ways in which we can do it cheaper. So I put together a supplies list, a very large supplies list with 3 different types of build: a basic build, an intermediate build, and an advanced build. And I just want to show you that now. If I go over here, no, not that direction, over here, and I go to my supplies list here. So I've put together this very big supplies list. It's everything you could ever need to convert a van, according to metalwork, carpentry, water, gas, electrics. And everything either is in a basic build, an intermediate build, or an advanced build, or some mixture of both. And it just gives a description of what item it is, where you can buy it, so on and so forth. If I go to the basic build, for example, this is all the supplies that I need for a basic build. Intermediate, the exact same. Advanced, exact same as well, so on and so forth. So what I did then, when I put all of these supplies together, is we get an idea of how much these builds can cost. So a basic build, if we bought only new supplies, now there's lots of ways in which we can knock thousands of dollars off of these, reclaimed wood and a bunch of other things. But if we bought all brand new supplies, a basic build would be $6,236, an intermediate build about $13,000, and advanced way up. I mean, you can add all the bells and whistles. Something to point out that's really interesting here between the basic and intermediate builds, which is what most people will be doing, is that the majority of our expenses are on carpentry and on electrics. We expect to spend between 20 and 35% of our overall budget on the carpentry, which is really good news because we can save lots of money, and there's loads of ways in which we can save money on carpentry. Things like renting tools rather than buying them, reclaimed wood, and yeah, loads of ways which we can save on carpentry. And we can tend to spend as well about 35% of our budget on electrics. And this is also good news because there are loads of ways in which we can save money on electrics. We can buy open box products. We can buy, refurbished products. We can just simply bring down the level and the brands, sort of go for no brand electronics. There are loads of ways in which we can save money here too. So really, I think it's just good to understand the carpentry and electrics are 2 places that we can save money a lot, and they are the 2 biggest expenses. So if we continue on, I think it's really important for us to talk about how much we're spending on the van versus how much we're spending on the conversion itself. We have 2 rules that we want to go by, either 70-30 or 60-40. We always want to be spending more money on the van itself than on the conversion, just due to depreciation. So if we're going with 70-30 and we have $20,000 as our overall budget, we want to spend $14,000 on the van, $6,000 on the build. Or if we're going 60-40 method, we want to go $12,000 on the van and then $8,000 on the build. One interesting thing that a lot of people do in order to basically chop out their rent as soon as possible and hop into the van is to do something called just build while you live. So basically you get all the bare necessities into your van as quickly as you can, move into the van, and then you kind of just to continue to build out the van. And that gives you a little bit of extra money because you've maybe cut out the rent that you're paying, some utility bills, things like that. So we've looked at the cost of a van, United States, on average, $14,500. The cost of a conversion between $6,000 and $13,000. If you buy only brand new and you use no money-saving techniques, you can definitely knock thousands off of this for sure. But then there's this sneaky little thing called hidden costs, and this bites lots of people in the butt. We think of van life as being the cost of the van, the cost of the conversion, the cost of life on the road, but there's all of these admin costs. And this was a surprise to me, I think, when I was doing mine. So in Ireland, these were my hidden costs exactly. So the first up was an engineer's report. Now, because I was buying my van used, I wanted to get a mechanic to go out and check out the van to make sure that it was in good condition before I went and bought it. I paid this mechanic €120 to go do a very detailed inspection for me. That actually paid for itself plus a whole load on top, because the engineer basically came back and said, oh, Shane, there is a bunch of things here that I think you should bring up with the seller. So I brought it up with the seller and managed to knock a bunch of cash off of the asking price of the van, which was great. But it was a hidden cost in that it was €120 for a mechanic. 2, vehicle registration tax. In Ireland, I needed to convert my van from a van into a camper van. This was a change in registration, and there was a 13% tax on that. Number 3 was the motor tax. This is just a yearly tax, it's €100 in my country. Number 4 is a roadworthiness test. In Europe, you need to do this in all countries. In the United States, it's not a thing. And then number 5, of course, is insurance. This really is very variable depending on your country. But my total hidden cost immediately after doing the van conversion and before I could even hit the road was €2,255, which is about $2,700, $2,800 maybe, something like that. So just good to be aware of some of those hidden costs, and just to do your due diligence when you're, grabbing your van, to go check the insurance requirements, go check the requirements of the government or the state that you're in. And there's lots of these hidden costs. There's motor taxes, registration tax, title transfer fees is if we're buying the van from somebody else, there may be a cost involved in the transfer of the title. Insurance, roadworthiness inspection, maintenance costs, vehicle emissions test, just in some countries, environmental fees, and then mandatory purchases for driving legally in that country. You may need to buy things or upgrade your vehicle in some way to make it legal to drive on the road. So with all that being said, we've built our van, we've bought the van, we've done the conversion. How much does it actually cost to live on the road? The next big question. So this was also some really fun research that I enjoyed putting together, I have to say. So I put together, and many of you will have already received this if you subscribe to either my newsletter or Project Vanlife's newsletter, this Vanlife budget. So it's basically, depending on what type of person you are you a humble person, known person, or expensive? What kind of amount of money can you expect to spend on the road? According to 3 categories, we have van-specific expenses. These wouldn't exist if you didn't have a camper van. We have personal expenses, and we have optional expenses. So we sent that out already. You can check your email inbox for that. But what we can basically take from that is most people can expect to spend $1,700 per month on the road. You can spend a lot more, and you can absolutely 100% spend a lot less than that. But I think it's a good ballpark to kind of get into your mind, is it's about $1,700 per month on the road. This is roughly what I find that I spend personally as well. FarOutRide.com, who are absolutely amazing website. They've been teaching people how to build vans longer than I have. Their website is an absolute treasure trove of amazing information. They basically tracked in real time for several years their actual expenses. I want to show you that. If we go to fireoutright.com/vanlife actual cost, they did such a cool survey. They started in 2017 and they tracked their costs all the way until 2020. And 2 years, they tracked every single cost for 2 full years. And now this was for 2 people specifically, but their total cost for 2 people on average per month was $2,600. So about $1,300 per person on the road. So I encourage you to go check out this guy's website in general. But I thought it was really interesting just to get an eye. So $2,600 for 2 people, $1,300 for each of them in the van. Something that we hear a lot at Project Vanlife is how big a hurdle financials are for people in general in getting into van life. That's why we're having this webinar, and specifically student debt, and for good reason. The average loan debt in the USA is $37,000. It's huge, no doubt about it. So if Vanlife could save you $12,000 to $20,000 in 1 year, you could pay off your student debt in 2 to 3 years of van life. Now, if we add in the cost of buying the van, doing the conversion as well, you want to bring up that a little bit. So you could essentially pay off your student debt in 3 to 5 years, just simply by living in the van. As I said, like, there are some really big hurdles that we've seen, and we've surveyed hundreds and hundreds of people, but it is basically financials are the biggest hurdle in stopping people in hopping into van life. And it is such a shame because you can save so much money by living in the van. So it's like this chicken egg kind of situation. It's just like, once I'm there, then I can lower my expenses. And it's a shame, but definitely van life can be a fantastic way to help with debt. So we've looked at how much the entire thing costs, how much the van costs, the conversion, the hidden costs, and how much we can expect to spend on the road. Don't worry, we're going to be sending out this webinar and the recording after this, so you can go back over it and look a little bit deeper. I have to kind of keep the pace going throughout it. But next, we want to look at all the different ways in which we can fund a van conversion so that you can start as soon as possible. The way I see it, there are 7 ways to save up for van life and to afford and to hop into this lifestyle. First up, we have dipping into savings and investments. Very straightforward, just our cash, our liquid savings that we have right now. Number 2 is downsizing and selling off our possessions. We're going to be talking about that a lot very soon. I love this because it also really goes in with the minimalism side of van life. Number 3 is budgeting and cutting expenses. Number 4 is financing, taking out debt. Number 5 is negotiating a pay rise with your current job. Number 6 is moving location to a low cost of living location and potentially even doing your build in a low cost of living location. And number 7 is taking on some part-time work or some side hustles. So we're going to be discussing all of these in this webinar. It's the meat and bones of the webinar. So there's loads of really exciting, juicy techniques that you're going to be able to use. So let's hop in and have a look. And I think no better place to hop in, whoops-a-daisies, quite frankly, than budgeting. Budgeting is very boring, hey? But incredibly damn important. The most important financial thing that you can do to help with your van life and, quite frankly, in your life. I'm really big into business books. Call me a nerd. But there's a very famous business writer back in the day. He's an old guy now. In fact, I think he might be dead. Peter Drucker was his name. And he had a famous phrase: what gets measured gets managed. In other words, if we don't know what our incomes are and what our expenses are, how in the heck are we going to be able to know how much we can save each month? We're kind of, throwing darts in the dark. We need to know very precisely exactly how much we are saving. We need to track everything. So that's where budgeting comes in. And I'm a bit of a budgeting nerd for sure. I want to give a quick stat here of why budgeting is so important. As of August 2023, the average personal savings rate for individuals in the United States was just 3.9%. So given the average salary of $31,000 in the USA, it would take 10 to 20 years to save up for a van conversion at that savings rate. So probably that's not good enough if you're here. You want to hit the road a lot sooner than 10 to 20 years. So we want to try and improve this. And absolutely, we can improve this. Absolutely, for sure. We can make this not just 3.9%, but 39% if you are very diligent. No, not in all cases, but absolutely we can make this 10 to 20%. So let's go into how. What gets measured gets managed. We need to track things. So we need to have a good budget planner. There's just 2 things that a good budget planner needs. We need to be able to set the budget by category. It's not good enough to say, oh, I want to save $1,500 this month. No, we want to go in category by category and set our budget for specific things. We want to go in, okay, I'm going to spend $150 on gas. I'm going to spend $100 on groceries. I'm going to spend $150 on eating out, whatever it might be. And once we've set the budget for those categories, we want to track our expenses for those categories. There is a budget tracker that I've been using for years, and it's completely for free. We have absolutely no affiliation with these guys. The company is called Tiller. And on screen, I have there a little hyperlink, sheetlist.net/sheet/Tiller monthly budget free version. I'm going to show you what that looks like. If you go to that link, you get to a website like this. As I said, we have zero affiliation with these guys, but I think it's great. I've been using it for such a long time. And you can just get the sheet here. And it's basically a Google sheet. And that sheet looks like this. It's very simple. You basically have 3 tabs inside it. You have transactions, categories, and monthly budget. Inside transactions, we basically have all of the transactions that we may make. So what we want to do here is come in each week, ideally, and just check through what our expenses were and pop them in here line by line. What was the expense? What was the date? What's the category, importantly, that it belongs to? And then what account does it belong to? Now, actually, Tiller have a paid version that I've checked out in the past as well, whereby it automates the whole thing. It hooks in with your bank account, and then it'll just update this for you. But I think there's a lot of benefit in actually going in yourself each week and really manually putting it in, because you get to really see just where your expenses are going. They also have categories tab here. This is an important tab. This is where we can set the budget for each category. So for utilities, I want to budget 150, for gear and clothing, 100, home improvements, 200, so on and so forth. We've set our budget, we've input the transactions on this previous tab, and then we get this lovely, very, very simple little dashboard. So in this monthly budget view, we can basically choose the month, we can choose the year, and it'll auto-populate all of this to represent that. So what we have here is the budget according to each category that we've assigned. We have the actual expenditure according to our transactions that we've spent this month here. And then we have the available funds per each category here as well that we have left to spend, and some really nice visualizations up top. So it's like, oh, you have 27% of your budget left this year, or this month, should I say. So I really like this spreadsheet. Definitely encourage you to go check it out. But whether you use that or something else, it's just so important to set a budget. It's the best thing that you can do right now, definitely to set you up for success with your van life dreams. I have a couple little tips in order to sort of stick with your budget, because it can be kind of tricky because it's so boring sometimes. I think there's a real importance in setting realistic goals. One of the big reasons why I got into van life was because of something called FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. It was something I was very interested in. I wanted to increase my income, lower my expenses, and invest as much as I could of my paycheck every month. And at some stages, I was investing between 70 and 80% of my paycheck every single month. I definitely do not do that right now, to be completely clear. But it can be very enticing for people to go in. It's like, I'm going to save 70% straight away, and get burned and then just completely shy away from the whole thing. Go in there and be gentle on yourself. Just start easy and work your way up, and hopefully save more and more as you figure out more ways to get really, really smart and save more. So just be a little bit realistic. I encourage you to check out some budgeting apps as well. There's 2 apps that are really cool. One is called YNAB, Y-N-A-B. It's a really good budgeting app. And then there's another app. It's not really a budgeting app, but it's a finance app in general called Acorns. And basically Acorns can tell whenever you spend money on your card, and it'll just round it up to the nearest dollar every time you spend money. And it'll just put that money into a savings account, or it can even invest it if you want it. There's another technique that I used in the past called cash envelopes. Cash is so much better than cards are for saving money by quite a ways, because it's such a visual representation of the cash. You're much less likely to use it. So cash envelopes basically means at the start of the month, you're going to take out your entire budget for that month and put it into different envelopes according to different things. This is my gas envelope. This is my groceries envelope. This is my utilities envelope. $200, $300, $100, so on and so forth. And I can only spend the money that's in those envelopes. When the envelopes are gone, I'm gone. I can't spend any more money. Accountability is another great tool, either with your partner or with a good friend. Share your budgets with each other and get real insight into each other's financials. Might be a bit weird, might feel a bit awkward, but accountability is so, so powerful, especially when it comes to your finances. There's a lot of power behind automation as well. I have set up on the 1st of every single month a standing order. A standing order will essentially automatically send a certain portion, a certain percentage of my paycheck, even though I work for myself, into a savings account. So every month, whether I like it or not, money is sent into my savings account. Having this level of automation is really nice. You can also ask your employer to set up a direct debit whereby they send a certain portion of your paycheck to a different account. So there's different ways you can do it. Finally, schedule reminders. You need to look at this at your budget, like every week if you can. It's a really, really important thing to just constantly go in, constantly keep checking on it. Reminders on your phone are a good way to do it. Okay, that is the budgeting slide done. Please take it on board. It's so important, despite the fact that it is budgeting, I do know. Next, I want to go into something slightly less boring, which is downsizing, selling off your stuff. It can feel like such a weight off of your shoulders to sort of embrace minimalism. I think it ties in so well with living in a van. I've been here for, over 4 years. Everything I have in the world is here. My outdoor stuff is in the boxes underneath the bed, and I've just got this wardrobe here with clothes. Everything else, as much as I possibly could have, was sold off or given away. It can fund actually a really large part of van life is selling off your possessions. You can actually, many people can expect to like make up to $6,000 simply by selling off their stuff. Some people much more. It can sometimes fund the entire van just on its own, the simple act of selling off your things. So in this lesson, I want to talk about how to go about selling off your possessions. The first thing you want to do is go around your apartment, go around your house, and take inventory of everything that you have. So you want to go around and really get very nitty gritty. Take your time while doing this exercise. Go around and just really see, what can I get rid of in this home? And ask yourself some questions while you're going around. Think, do I use this regularly? If you haven't used it in 3 months, chances are, for the most part, you really don't need it. There are some things like those skis that, well, I use them all the time, but sometimes people only use them once a year. Maybe you don't want to get rid of those. I understand, because they're important. But for the most part, if you don't use it regularly, you really can get rid of it. Think about how much it enhances your life. Can you live without it? How much of a sentimental value do you have? And just because it has a sentimental value doesn't necessarily mean you should keep it. But some things, of course, are more precious to us. And a very important question is, how many of these do I need? Do you really need 55 mugs? Probably not. You could probably get away with just 2. I have 2 mugs. Sometimes if I have many people over, that becomes a problem, but it's not often a problem. When we're going around and we're taking inventory, we've really noted all the things that we might be able to get rid of. We want to put them down in a spreadsheet. And when in this spreadsheet, we want to note a few different things. We want to note the condition of the item. Is it new? Is it like new? Does it have a few scratches on it? We want to note the market price as well. So what is the expected value we could sell this for? And we want to put all this into a spreadsheet. We also want to take lovely photographs of all the things that we want to sell. Please don't take bad photos, take good photos. The item will nearly sell itself if you have good photographs with good lighting of it. And clean up the item as well, especially if you're selling granny's mugs. Just clean them up a little bit before you list them. I want to go over here and show you we have we've put together a downsizing spreadsheet as well. And again, I'll show you guys how to get access to all of these at the end. But this is like a downsizing calculator spreadsheet. We can input all the things as we're going around our house in here. You'll note as well, most of the time we're going to be selling online, though there are many ways, and we'll discuss that, of where you can sell. But typically we sell online. If we're selling online, for example, here we're selling our laptop on Craigslist, list the item in multiple locations in your vicinity or even further away. For example, here I'm listing the laptop in San Francisco Bay and in Los Angeles. I'm increasing my surface area to make it much more likely and get much more interest in the product. And you might go even further away again and then just post it to somebody rather than meeting up with them in person. So as I said, there are many different places we can sell. Most of the time, we're going to be selling Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, eBay, or Amazon even. Yes, you can sell secondhand on Amazon. But there are other places that we can sell that are kind of a little bit more creative. Garage sales are fun in your neighborhood. Consignment stores, pawn shops, car boot sales or trunk sales. And then there are some apps as well. OfferUp app and LetGo app are 2 particularly good apps for selling stuff, and Depop as well. These are really great apps for you to look at. So loads of places that we can sell our stuff. And downsizing, I really think, goes beyond just selling our stuff. I think downsizing is like a minimalism mentality, and there are other places in our life that we can downsize to in order to help fund van life. One of those of course, is moving to a cheaper living space, a smaller, cheaper, downsizing your living space. This could be a shared living space where you move in. Maybe it's living with other flatmates or something, or just moving to a smaller place yourself. This will, of course, reduce your rent, but also reduce your utility bills. And also gives you less space to just fill up with junk, probably too. Also, really big thing to think about is subscriptions these days, and we're going to touch on this a little bit later, but reducing monthly bills, cable memberships, things like that is really important way to downsize the life. Getting really conscious with our spending in general, sticking to a budget. I find meal planning to be an excellent way to stop mostly impulse buying. If I know at the start of the week what I'm going to be cooking, it's a great way to save a bit of money. And DIY repairs. There are always these things that break around the house. Getting a little bit decent with DIY is going to help you on your van ventures and also save you money in the meantime. So we've looked at setting up a budget. We have looked at downsizing, selling off our possessions to fund van life. Sometimes the amount of money you can make from selling off your possessions can fund the entire first part of the van life, which is buying the van. So next, let's look at cutting expenses. I have 14 practical ways that I want to show you guys about how you can cut expenses right now in order to save up more and hit the road as soon as possible. The first two we've touched on a little bit. Automation, 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 as much as we can, be it this with standing orders or direct debits or using budgeting apps. YNAB, fantastic. Every dollar is great. And we've talked a little bit about Acorns as well. Really, if you can automate the savings as much as you can, it's going to help because it just clears your mind. You don't even have to think about it. Number 3 is cooking at home. There's a website called budgetbites.com that's really cool. It basically gives you healthy recipes that are really cheap to make. In general, cheap food is probably healthy food. A lot of like fresh produce can be quite good value and is healthy for you and cheap way to eat as well. But cooking at home rather than eating out at restaurants, for me, I struggle. I love Indian food. I love going out to Indian restaurants. But I have to say, I have to stop myself from doing that and cook. Even here on the van, things don't change. Like I'm here in the van, I still have to get myself to do all of these things. Number 4 is to cut subscription services. This is incredibly important. We have so many subscriptions. I probably have 10 subscriptions, I would say. And we need to track these in a spreadsheet so that we know exactly how much we're paying, how frequently it is, and which subscriptions are there. Because there's some sneaky ones that hop in there, and really going through and being very ruthless with our subscriptions. One thing that we should do, what gets measured gets managed. We want to put our subscriptions in this spreadsheet and go through them and see, is there a way either A, I can get rid of the subscription entirely, or B, save money on it? And there are many ways in which we can do this. Perhaps we just get rid of the subscription or change to a family plan to reduce the price, share it among a few people. Or we cancel our subscription and then look for some discount codes for that subscription and then resubscribe again. There's 2 apps that are interesting, Rocket Money and TrackMySubs.com. Both help in everything that I've been talking about there. They basically help you track your subscriptions. I will say they're not a necessity. The most important thing is just have a spreadsheet yourself and track what subscriptions you actually have. Netflix, Adobe, whatever it is. Number 5, stop impulse buying. I feel really strongly about this, actually. Whoa, we're going a bit crazy. Impulse buying has to be one of the worst ways in which we spend money, because it's money that we don't even want to spend. We know we're bad beforehand, during, and after the entire process, and we feel terrible about the entire thing. I think specifically when we are grocery shopping, we need to be really careful. Only grocery shop when you're full, and always use a shopping list. It helps if you do some meal planning as well, but always going in there knowing exactly what you want to buy. And be really careful if we're shopping when we are emotional. If we're really sad or hungry or angry, any of these emotions, don't do it. Don't go there. Wait until tomorrow. It makes it really, really hard to resist that temptation. I think as well, unsubscribing from marketing emails is a great way to stop impulse buying. Companies want to sell you stuff. If we unsubscribe from their emails, then hopefully we can buy less stuff. And I think one rule that I always try and have, I break it sometimes, I am human, is that whenever I want to buy something that feels a little bit left of field, I'll just wait a week and see if I still want to buy that thing, and only then will I actually go in and buy the thing. So there's a whole world in impulse buying that I think we just need to be really aware of. Ultimately, it just comes down to mindful spending. Bulk shop. My mother, Irish lady, is very cautious with her pennies. And she always shops in a shop called Musgraves in Ireland, which is a big bookshop thing where you go in. And so she'll go in there and she'll buy 100 toilet rolls at one time and save loads of cash, but she comes out with 100 toilet rolls that will last us like a year. But it's a great way to save money, is to go bulk shopping rather than just going each little time you need to make a shop. If you want to do this in terms of not so much food, but more for like thrift stores, there's a great app called Thrift Store Locator, which basically shows you all the thrift stores in your area that you can go to. Number 7 is to move into a smaller flat. We talked about downsizing already. Number 8 is house sitting. House sitting is really cool because we can essentially cut our rent entirely by just house sitting, and even sometimes get paid for doing so, which is interesting. There's a website called trustedhousesitters.com where we literally can go stay in other people's houses. Great way to save up for van life. Number 9, sell your expensive car and get a banger, or don't get any car at all. Just sell your car and then buy the van. It's a bit of a leap of faith, but definitely if you're in an expensive car, it's a really great way to get a lot of money very quickly. Number 10, always ask for a discount. I have a Dutch friend called Chris, and sometimes I'm with him, I squirm a little bit because of how good he is at asking for discounts. If any of you know about the stereotype of Dutch people are very cautious with their money, and this guy lives up to that. He's amazing, always asks for a discount, and he always gets it because he always has the courage to ask. There was a book called Never Split the Difference by lead FBI hostage negotiator called Chris Voss. Amazing book. He always talks about how we need to have the backbone to just ask for a discount, because at the very least we can get 5 or 10% by just asking. If you don't feel comfortable asking for a discount, there is a fantastic plugin that you can use for your web browser on your computer called Honey. Joinhoney.com is the name of the website. I use it all the time if I am shopping online. I don't actually buy too much stuff, but basically at checkout, when you're going to buy something, you can click to run Honey, and Honey will go and scour the internet and check for any coupon codes that you can apply when you're buying this thing. I've saved so much money using Honey. It's crazy. It has probably like a 50% success. Every time I run Honey, most of the time, or nearly 50% of the time, I suppose, I will get a discount code applied to the basket. Number 11 is to reduce utility costs. We're going to be going into this in a second. We can save a bunch of cash right now on utility costs in our house. Number 12 is to review our insurance. There's typically 3 insurance that we want to look at: auto, home, and health. And this is very tied into always asking for a discount. First of all, we can ask for a discount from our current insurers when we are up for renewal, or when we're up for renewal, let's just shop around a little bit and play them off of each other. Go get a quote from a different insurer. If it's lower than what you have, go back to your current insurer, say, hey, can you price match? You're guaranteed to definitely be able to knock a good bit of money off your insurance by just taking a little bit of time and shopping around when it's coming to renewal. 2 more. Using public transport and carpooling is a great way to save money, especially if we sell our car. Carpooling, we could look at an app like BlaBlaCar. In fact, we can carpool to make money too. If you have a car, you can go on BlaBlaCar and people can actually pay you to carpool. Quite cool. And then finally, number 14, do DIY yourself rather than outsourcing. We talked about this already, the importance of learning and doing the DIY yourself rather than getting somebody in to do the plumbing or to fix X, Y, and Z. So I want to talk a little bit more about utilities, because utilities is actually very, very interesting. We can typically save between $200 and $600 per month on utilities by doing something called an energy audit. And we're going to look at an energy audit in a second. But before then, I want to go through the top 10 most energy intensive appliances in a house so that you're just really aware of where the real expenses are coming from. And I think the 5 here are really important to look at. First of all, an electric heating system. They're seriously expensive. Most people actually won't have an electric heating system. They may be on gas or some other way of getting it. I know in China, everybody's on an electric heating system practically, which is very interesting. But electric heating system is hugely energy intensive, which means more money is being spent. Air conditioning is famously extremely energy intensive and expensive. We have water heaters, clothes dryers, and refrigerators. Electric ovens, dishwashers, desktop computers, which are plugged in all the time, an electric kettle, famously being the most energy intensive kitchen appliance, and then 10 is a washing machine. So I think it's just really good to know every time you're using any of these 10 items that these will really cost you quite a bit of money. And so just being very cognizant of when we're using them. So I mentioned about this whole energy audit thing, right? So yeah, there's a company called Leonardo Energy that did a big survey on how much we can expect to save by doing an energy audit. So energy audits, typically you get done by professionals. You'll bring a professional in to do it for you. He'll cost or she'll cost many hundreds of dollars, and they're going to carry out an audit that looks something like this on your house. They go through your whole house or apartment and they ask loads of questions. Is your HVAC system less than 10 years old? Blah, 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 blah. Through heating and cooling, insulation, windows, technology, water heating, general appliances. There's loads of questions that they go through. You can go on Google and find an energy saving audit like this one. I'm going to tell you guys how to get access to this at the end of the webinar. But you can go and do one yourself and save so much money by going around your house right now. For example, in a van, when you're going to be converting your van, there's a really important concept to know about called thermal bridges for insulation. And thermal bridges are the bane of any winter van lifer because it's basically the part in your insulation that's weak and that hot air really easily slips through. For me, it's my doors. Those cracks around the doors are killer. And there's also a few places in the van where you get a lot of these leaks. In a house, we have the exact same thing, these thermal bridges. And we want to really fix any of these leaks as possible. So it could be as simple as putting a little draft excluder at the bottom of a door to stop air from moving in and out. It could save us actually a lot of cash. And we just don't really think about it. So an energy audit is a super cool way to save, as I said, between $200 and $600 per month on average for a household. So highly recommend you check it out. So we've already been covering a lot, and we still have quite a bit to cover in terms of how to save up for van life. Up to this point, we've really looked at budgeting and how to cut expenses, how to be sort of frugal with our utilities, this kind of thing. Now I want to look at how to earn some extra income on the side so that we can really basically speed up the time until we can buy the van or start living van life. So I've put together a bunch of ways in which we can take on some extra work on the side. First up, we have delivery driving. There are 3 apps / companies, Instacart, Whole Food, and Costco, where we can deliver groceries for. And we can also make deliveries with Postmates as well. So these are 4 different ways in which we can do delivery driving. This is nice, specifically delivery driving, because we can do it around our main job. You know, we could do it weekends, we could do it after work, so on and so forth. Uber driving is also a great way and a low barrier to entry way. I've actually found, because we've talked to lots of people from the community, and Uber driving seems to be the #1 way in which people save up for van life and take on some extra work, Uber driving, because it pays actually reasonably well. Number 3 is part-time retail service industry work. This is like cafe work or restaurant work, again, fitting it around your schedule. Number 4 is seasonal work, like a lifty in a ski resort. This one is nice because winter van conversions can be, I did a winter van conversion in Ireland, goodness me, it was very wet. And for that reason, it can be a bit challenging, wet and cold in winter. So some people prefer to work during the winter and do their conversion during the summer instead. Online surveys are a great way as well to make a bit of extra cash on the side. Swagbooks and Survey Junkie are 2 websites that you can use. You literally log on, create an account, and get paid to fill out surveys. Super easy to do. Online data entry is another really interesting one to look at. There's 2 websites in particular that are interesting. Remotetasks.co and FlexJobs are 2 great ways to basically get paired up with somebody who needs you to do online data entry. These tends to be kind of monotonous work. It just is entering numbers or figures or whatever into spreadsheets over and over and over again. And you can also look at getting work on Upwork and Fiverr as well for this. And Upwork and Fiverr are really the 2 great websites that we can look at for getting work on the side. And many of the things I'm going to discuss here, we can look at Upwork and Fiverr. This is basically hooking up freelancers with people who need freelancers, I suppose. So number 7, freelance writing and proofreading. Again, Upwork and Fiverr are great places in which we can do this if you particularly like writing. If you're a graphics person, we could do some freelance graphic design, maybe some logo creation, website design, this kind of thing. Video editing, social media management, all through Fiverr and Upwork, we can get work here. If you're a numbers person, bookkeeping can actually be a really, really, really great way to go. I will say before you hop into bookkeeping, definitely take a little course. It doesn't have to be overly complicated, but bookkeeping can be lucrative, can be actually fun work. You can do all the work that I'm mentioning here, you can do, or most of the work you can do while you're living in the van as well. So you can literally take this and start using this as your main thing while being in the van, which is cool. But for bookkeeping, there's a website called Accounting Fly, where you go in and you can basically get paired up and you can do bookkeeping for someone or a company, so on and so forth. And we can also go on Upwork as well to get this kind of work. If you know how to code, web development can be the way to go. Then we have the world of virtual assistants, a VA. Back in the olden days, there was just an assistant. These days, many people are taking virtual assistants. There are courses that you can do to become a virtual assistant. I really don't think that taking a course in virtual assistance is actually needed. I think many people can just hop in and do this straight away. And it encompasses a lot, and it can be very fun, actually. If you're a people person and you enjoy kind of doing many different things, jack of all trades, and working with, a fast-paced environment, a virtual assistant can actually be quite fun. It could be doing data entry, and it could be doing a plethora of other things. Normally, you'd be working for it could be a CEO or some other C-class level person. Number 14, if you're into academics, you could look at doing some online tutoring for the likes of Chegg Tutors or tutor.com are two places you can go to tutor people online. Then we have photography services. If you're into that, you can sell prints on Etsy. There's loads of websites in which you can sell photography, or it can be tricky to do that. Go and offer photography services in your hometown. And then we get into skill-specific ones. If you love DIY or you love fitness, being a handyman or fitness instructor can help. If you love pets, especially if you live in somewhere that's actually quite wealthy, dog walking and pet sitting can be incredibly lucrative. This place that I live here, there are lots of rich people with big chalets, and there's a big dog walking scene, actually. I have lots of friends who do it. There's two apps, Rover and Pawshake, that are great. They can get you basically hooked in with people where you can just go walk their dogs. I mean, it's pretty nice. If you like bow wows, then it's a lovely way to make extra cash on the side. And 18 down the bottom. Always keep your eyes open if you are so inclined to Craigslist gigs. There's a whole page just for gigs. These are basically tiny little side hustles that don't really fit into any category, but may just tickle your fancy, and you can hop in and look at. So there are 18 ways in which we can save up and earn a little bit of extra income on the side. So I know that there's lots of people in the chat here. So I just want to say, while we're here midway, I'm going to be going through if you have any questions and ask them all at the end, okay? And yes, the recording is available afterwards, don't worry. But we're going to be doing some things for webinar exclusive people right here if you stay until the end. But please hold your questions to the end and I will get to them. I promise. Financing. So this is really interesting. I came across so much things that surprised me when I was looking at financing for van life. In Europe, taking out loans for vehicles is not that common. In the UK, 26% of new vehicles have a loan taken out for them. In the USA, it's 86% of new vehicles have a loan taken out, and 55% of used vehicles have a loan taken out for them. So I think there's basically just this very big difference in mentality over loans, but certainly it's something really important to look at. And it's very, very, very relevant to van life as well. I love finance in general, and I am very hesitant in ever telling anybody to take out a vehicle loan, because straight up, for sure, 100%, an RV loan is not a good financial investment. An RV will lose 20 to 30% of its value immediately within the first year. So a loan is definitely not a good financial investment. However, and so for that reason, some people may write it off completely. However, it could be a good quality of life investment. Especially if you are swapping out your house for an RV and moving into it full time and going to have this absolutely incredible life, just traveling all about the place and just really like upgrading your life in every way, where really, can you put a price on that? Then yes, I'm sure that a loan can fit in there as a good investment. I know this is not financial advice, but I just do want to call it. It's not a good financial investment, but it definitely can be a good quality of life investment if you're going to upgrade your life so substantially by doing so. There are 7 key terms that I want to talk about when it comes to van financing, vehicle financing in general. The first is the loan amount. This is the total amount that we want to take out. For example, let's say we want to take out $10,000 to buy our van. Number 2 is the interest rate. Typically for a van, the interest rate is 7%. So this is 7% per year that we have to pay on top of the $10,000 when we're paying it back in total. The term is how long we have to pay back the loan. Typically for a van, this will be between 3 months and 5 years, with 5 years being the maximum. 4 is the monthly payment. So this is basically the $10,000 split by, say, the number of months that we have. So 5 years, the number of months inside there, with the little bit of interest on top. 5 then is the credit score. So this is how good rates we can get. If we basically improve our credit score, we get better interest rates. And we can improve our credit score by paying back our loans on time. If we take out credit card debt, that actually helps our credit score, especially if we pay back the credit card debt on time. Don't take out credit card debt, please, when you can avoid it. And number 6, down payment. Down payment is the amount that we have to pay upfront when we take out a loan. If our loan is $10,000, typically our down payment is 20%, so it's $2,000 that we need to pay in cash out of our own pocket right now. So, Motor Biscuit found in 2021 the average monthly payment for an RV loan ranges between $225 and $650 per month. So that's between 2 and 8 times cheaper than the average mortgage payment for a house, which is $1,811. So again, this is worth thinking about if you're switching out your life completely and moving full-time into van life. They also found that most lenders who offer RV loans will require a minimum down payment of 10%. I actually found that it's about 20% is on average what you'll be looking for. So to give a sample scenario, let's say that you have $15,000 van financed over 7 years. With an excellent credit score, you might secure a 4% interest rate, resulting in a monthly payment of approximately $208. So I want to actually demo specifically quite a good calculator from the website called bankrate.com. It's bankrate.com/loans/personal loans/personal loan calculator. If you are interested in taking out a loan, you can basically input your loan amount here, the term of it, and then the interest rate you've secured, and you click calculate, and it'll just tell you on the right your estimated payment per month. So in this case, it's $193 per month. As I said, this is for 5 years that you need to be able to pay this back. 193 may not be a lot per month, but just being really sure that you can cover that for 5 years, in which case maybe you should look at it. There are 3 places in which we can secure a loan. Banks and credit unions, of course. We can look at online lenders, and we can look at RV dealerships, or even used van dealerships. These will basically let you finance and pay for your van in segments. So every month you'll pay back the vehicle. It's actually very commonly done. I'm sure many people here have done it already in the past, whereby you pay for your car over time with a little bit of interest. They make it really easy for you. If instead of doing it through the dealership, you want to go through online lenders for RVs specifically, and this is US focused here, the 5 biggest and sort of best reviewed that I found for online lending are Lightstream, Good Sam Finance Center, very highly recommended, Alliant Credit Union, Bank of the West, and My Financing USA. These are 5 places that we can go for online loan for a van. So there we go. We looked at financing and going out a little bit of debt if we want to buy a van. If it improves your life, maybe. I won't say yes. Moving to a low cost of living location. This is such an interesting theme, an idea, because I think, again, it ties in so well with van life. You buy your van and the whole aim is to travel around to, more exotic places, to find new cultures, new places, new nature, all these different things that the world has to offer. And while we can do that when we have our van, we can also do it before we have our van. It can be a great way to, of course, move to a place which has lower expenses, especially if we can keep our job. This is excellent, and also have a really great time while doing it. Now, this is only a short part of the webinar, though I have lots of information on this topic because it's near and dear to my heart, travel in general. There are 5 really amazing websites for finding low cost of living locations. Nomad List, Numbeo, Expatistan, and Teleport are all 4 in the similar vein. You basically can search for places around the world that are cheap to live in and find across loads of metrics how much you can expect to spend there. This map here on the right specifically is supplied by Numbeo. We can see the really expensive places are in dark red, sorry, North America. And then the cheaper places are in yellow and green, these kind of colors, and maybe even orange as well. So Numbeo is a really cool one where we can go to just get an overview of where we might want to move. Airbnb is a little bit of an outlier, number 5. We can actually go on Airbnb and just search for some properties in the area we're thinking of going. It can get us a really good idea of how much we can expect to spend in that place, because property is super highly correlated with cost of living. I love these tools so much, but there's one tool in particular that I love, and it's called nomadlist.com. It was number 1 on the list there. The guy who runs this website, a guy called Peter Levels, he's like a serial entrepreneur. I've been following him for quite a few years. He has so many little companies that he bootstraps. He just builds them from nothing himself. And one of those websites is nomadlist.com, which I just love. I'm a big data guy, and I love maths and these kind of things, and wait until you see. This website here, you can basically go to anywhere in the world and see what it is like to live there across so many different metrics. But if you just go to the homepage, it's basically going to show you for digital nomads where the most popular spots are. So in first place right now, we have Bangkok, then Chiang Mai, Buenos Aires, Cape Town, Mexico City, so on and so forth. If I go into to Bangkok, for example, we get so many metrics about what it's like to live there. So the total score, what's like for a family, what's the cost like per month, what's the internet like, is it fun, what's the temperature, food safety, income level, population density, like happiness, hospitals, so many things. And there's so many other tabs here as well that are really cool, like cost of living. It even in fact has Airbnb on here already, which is really interesting. Has a pros and cons list, and then there's also this whole community aspect with Nomad List as well. No, we have no affiliation with Nomad List. Kind of wish we did. That would be really cool. But a really cool website for figuring out where you might want to move, because it's really a great way to save money and save up for van life. So we're moving into the end of the webinar now. I mentioned this tool. We're going to send it out to everybody for free completely who is here at this webinar, and that is our Vanlife Saver tool. This is a really cool tool. I really enjoyed putting this one together. So I think people really struggle with figuring out like how much it's going to cost and how long is it going to take. These are 2 big questions that lots of people have when they're thinking about van life. So this calculator is designed to basically answer that exact question. Given your money that you have, how long is it going to take to buy the van and to do the conversion? So in this case, for example, I might just zoom in a wee bit so that everybody can see. We can input all the inputs here, and we get some outputs down here. So for example, we can input our monthly income, say it's $3,000, our monthly expense, $2,000. So we're saving $1,000 a month. Let's say we have $5,000 right now in liquid cash savings that we can use for our van conversion. We expect the van to cost $10K. We expect the van conversion to cost $10K, and we expect that it will take about 6 months to convert. I can tell you right now that 6 months is a pretty good amount of months to put in here from what I've seen. People are a little bit overestimating of themselves in terms of how long it will take. So given this exact scenario, we can see here on the graph how long it'll take. And we have some little things here. So it'll take you 150 days to save up for your van purchase. And at the earliest, you can start your build in 180 days and then finish your build in 16 months. And we can play around with these parameters. And there's some really interesting things that we can do. For example, if we want to finance the van, take out a loan, we can check this box right here, which means that we've financed the van, we've taken out the loan, and I'm just going to set this to 0 so that the cost of the van is 0 now because we've already bought it. And we can see that it changes dramatically. So we can purchase the van now, and we can start building the van right now too. If I go back then, maybe I want to sell off some of my possessions. We've talked about downsizing a lot here already. So we can add in extra money that we will get from downsizing. If we've already started, maybe we've spent 5K on the build already, we can put that 5K in here as well. And we can see then the graph update because we've already spent a bit of money on the build. So this is a cool tool. We'll be sending it out to everybody, but I had loads of fun building it, I have to say, and I think it's pretty useful. So what have we gone over? We have talked about lots and lots of stuff in the webinar. As I said, we're going to be sending the recording out so you can go over it again in your own time. What we found was that the average van conversion will cost $21,700. That's excluding any hidden costs. People tend to fund it in 7 ways: dipping into savings, downsizing, cutting expenses, financing, negotiating a pay rise, moving location, and taking on part-time work and side hustles. With that being said, $21,700 is still a lot of money, hey? That's how much it costs, like, on average. But there are loads and loads and loads of ways to reduce the total cost by thousands of dollars. And to give you an exact idea, I saved $7,700 on this exact build. Mine cost $14,000, and has all the bells and whistles. Like, this thing is amazing. I love my van so much. So it is possible to save loads of money. You don't have to like live in a sardine tin can. Like, you can still have a super, super nice van and do it on a budget. So that is why we want to introduce the Vanlife budgeting course. So over the past few months, I've been working really closely with the guys at Project Vanlife. It's been so much fun to put together this new course, the Vanlife budgeting course, where we basically talk about how to save up for the build, what we've talked about here today, plus some, buying the van conversion, and life on the road. All about getting you to start living van life as soon as possible, to save as much money as possible, and basically showing you all the tiny little secrets that I've learned along the way in the many years that I've been doing van life, and to financially sustain life on the road as well, because it's not just about saving up and getting into the van, then it's about sustaining it while you're on the road. The course is split into 5 sections. Section 1 is saving up for van life. So we basically go deeper on a lot of the techniques that we've covered here today. So we go much, much deeper: budgeting, money saving techniques, earning extra income. Section 2 is very, very interesting part, which is saving money when buying a van. So we look at, because I'm such a statistical, quantitative kind of guy, I love this stuff. I really find out like how much money we should be spending per the mileage and the age of the vehicle, and how you can get the best value for money for the van that you're buying. We look at what the best vans are for your specific needs. We look at some checklists that you should be going through when buying the van, and some best practices, and basically making sure that we're not getting ripped off when buying the van, because you can definitely shave thousands of dollars off of buying the van if you do it correctly using things that we outline in the course. Section 3 then is saving money when converting a van. So this is saving money on every single tiny little part of the van conversion: on the carpentry, on the water, on the gas, electrics, metalwork, insulation, all these things, and looking at some mistakes to avoid as well. We also look at sizing your electrics correctly, because as we saw, the electrics are the biggest expense for most people. Certainly if you have a humble build and a normal build, the electrics are your biggest expense. So if we size our electrical system correctly and get all the right appliances, we can save loads of money there. Section 4 then is living economically on the road. So basically saving money on every single part of living on the road: gas, insurance, repairs, groceries, camping, cell phone, internet, tax, lots of things. And even in section 5 then, we do a masterclass in investing. This is an hour-long section of the course where we go deep on investing fundamentals. There are 70 lessons inside the course. There are 40 downloads, loads and loads and loads of tools, including all of the tools that we've looked at during this webinar, and a whole bunch more. So it's been so much fun putting together this course, and I've actually learned loads as well. For sure, guarantee that you'll save at least $1,000 off your van build and achieve your van life goal 2 to 3 months faster if you implement the advice in the course. I'm so confident in that I'm offering a 100% money back guarantee for the first 30 days. Grab the course. If it hasn't worked out for you, 100%, no questions asked. Just let us know and we'll give you the money back straight away. But I'm very sure that you're going to find it extremely, extremely useful. There are so many little hidden gems about how you can save money on all parts of your build. The course will literally pay for itself, plus a little bit some on top of that, quite a bit some on top of that. So just for webinar people, everybody here, you get the early price. We launched just now, right, literally this second, right as I'm saying this. The course just launched. How about that? If I had some like things to explode, like those little piñata things, I'd do it now. So it's normally $294, but you can get the course now for $97. Now that's just until this webinar ends. After that, the course will go up in price. So yeah, make sure you grab the course if you want to. Only if you want to. Don't worry, you don't got to. Just if you want to. If you want to save loads of money and start living van life as soon as possible, then go do it. So, okay, we've reached that time where we are going to do a little Q&A with me. You've got me for, I will say like, I don't know, how long will I do? Let's see how long I go, how much energy I have, but I'm feeling good. So You can ask me anything about living. I've been living on the road, basically doing van life since 2017, living on the road full time since 2019. Anything about living on the road. If you have any questions about van conversions, I am the guy to ask. This is your chance. I do teach people this thing professionally. So if you have anything you want to know, let me know. But my eyes are on the comment feed. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. And other than that, I just want to say thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm really humbled to see how many people are here and all the lovely comments there. They make me happy. So thank you everybody for tuning in for sure. Not too much. We got RV or van. I mean, a lot of people have been calling this. We call it RV in North America and a camper van in Europe. This is the eternal bane of my life, in fact, is trying to write blogs to cater for both audiences. Okay, I'm going back here and we have some good questions though. So Upwork and Fiverr. So no, not Fiverr, Fiverr. Fiverr is the name of the website. And it's a great way to get a little bit of side work on the side. And Upwork is the other one. Upwork is a little bit more professional. Fiverr is a little bit more gigs. Fiverr, you normally do a single gig for somebody. If you want to do more long-term work, it might be with Upwork. As I said, we're going to be sending out the recording afterwards to everybody. So we've got Christine Brand. What size of van is a good size? So this is covered extensively actually in the section 2 of the course where we talk about buying a van, because one of the most important things that you need to get right from the outset is to buy the right van. The worst thing you can do is buy the wrong van, and then you're kind of snookered. So it really depends on your lifestyle, and there's a handful of things that you need to consider beforehand. I think really importantly, are you a couple or are you single? Greatly determines the type of van. I think your height really determines the type of van. For most people over like 5 foot, 5'7", something like this, you're going to want a high roof van, or 5'8", you'll want a high roof van. If you're a couple, you want a long wheelbase van, I would say. If you spend a lot of time in the winter in your van, rather than just summer, you're going to want a bigger van as well, because you're going to be spending more time inside the van if you're a winter van lifer. If you're a summer van lifer, you're spending more time outside, so you don't have to think about these things so much. Another thing, if you're doing the van in winter, is that you're going to have more insulation. I have 5 centimeters of insulation on the roof, on the floor, and on all sides, and this greatly detracts from the size. Now, I'm 5'10", and I'm in a Ford Transit high roof, and my head is just at the top here, and that's with the 5 centimeters, just to give you an idea. Basically, if you want to do like extended periods of time in your van, I'm a big believer in a long wheelbase high roof van. If you want to do shorter trips, however, then you can definitely get away with smaller. I just think the comfort of the long wheelbase high roof, which I have here, like, it's so amazing to be able to come back. You can live full time in a space like this. I even think that the medium wheelbase high roof, you may get away with it if you're a smaller person, but it's as small as I'd want to personally go if I was doing full time. And I'm probably going to move on and talk about other questions, because I could talk about this specific one for a long time. I have a blog on my website on thevanconversion.com as well, which you can check out. It's called something like "These are the best vans for 2024" or something like this, but it talks about things to consider when buying a van. Let's see if we got any more questions. So Ralph says, can I use the flooring made for homes, or do I need to buy transport vehicles flooring? Goodness, what's the name of the flooring? It will typically be house flooring that you can use in your van. It can be a little bit expensive. I used it. It's called goodness, I forgot the name of it. Anyway, it's quite heavy duty floorboards that are scratch proof and waterproof as well. I would absolutely recommend them every day of the week. I went to a DIY shop. You can go to Lowe's, you can go to Home Depot, whatever is in your area, and get these. They come normally in big packs of 8. They're quite heavy, and they slot together like kind of like jigsaw pieces, and you can lay them down on the floor. I would absolutely go for them every day of the week. They're super, super resistant, and the van floor takes a beating, like for sure. There's always, humidity is always a thing to battle with. There's always moisture inside. You're always bringing things in. So you want good, sturdy floorboards. What I would not suggest doing is simply getting like a sheet of plywood. Some people do this, but getting a sheet of plywood, doing a really cheap build, because eventually moisture will seep into the plywood. It'll get spongy and eventually break. But if you're going for a really, really cheap build, you actually can just simply use plywood, but it just basically has a limited lifespan. Judy, are the costs you mentioned in the beginning for a long wheelbase and high roof, or just regular sized vans? Yeah, great question. So it would be for like a sort of a mid-sized van, not for a jumbo size. It'd be for between a long wheelbase and a medium wheelbase thing. For most of the costs that we go through in the supplies list, everything, it doesn't matter massively what size of van you have. There are only two things that increase in price basically when you have a bigger van. One is the wood, because you basically need more wood, of course, for a bigger van. And two is insulation, because you need more insulation for a bigger van. So I did try and do it for an average sized vehicle, so between a mid and a long wheelbase van. Laminate flooring, thank you, Colin. That's the word, laminate flooring. Exactly. Cool. I'm going to keep going through. What is the URL for your blog? Thevanconversion.com. As far as the actual specific blog, if it's in the planning section. If you go there, you'll see a van blog. It has loads of information about choosing vans. Let's see. How long do you keep fresh water in your van for? Great question. So there's a few things on this. If you leave water stagnant for a long period of time, it gets diseases, of course. It can get bacterial infections. Luckily, I go through mine at a quick enough pace that I don't have to worry about this. There are studies that you can find online where, like, after a couple months, you definitely need to replace it and not drink from it. But because I'm living in mine full time, I go through it. To go through 80 liters of fresh water, which is how much fresh water I have, it typically takes me about 3 weeks, I would say. One really important thing to think about with this, because it's really important to think about bacteria and your water tanks. If you have underslung water tanks, so water tanks that are outside your van, make sure that you're not using translucent material, so not see-through plastic. You want dark plastic. Normally either black or blue is the color of those containers, because if you have see-through plastic, bacteria can start to grow when the sun shines in. So definitely if you have outside mounted ones, don't use see-through plastic. Other thing, when you want to make sure that you clean out your containers. I clean my containers out like every 6 months, where I do 1 to 100 bleach mix with water. But that's a little bit specific probably about that. In general, fresh water, I don't worry too much about it. If you are somewhere where you need to think about filtration, luckily in Ireland we have plenty of fresh water and it's really good quality. I don't have to worry too much. But I know in some countries, Spain for instance, and lots of them, the United States as well, you need to think about water. So there's lots of different ways in which we can filter water in our van. We can do a simple inline filter. It's about this size, and we just install it between the tap and our water tank. Very cheap, easy install to do, and the water just goes through the inline filter and filters it out. If we want to go more heavy duty, we can install a 3-stage filter. Quite sizable, 3 sort of cylinders like this that we would install, and it goes through all of these 3s, gets it really, really clean. And if we want to go a level even beyond that, we can get a UV filter as well, where UV light actually kills bacteria as well. We need to hook this into our electrical system, but it will kill off any bacteria in the water as well. There is something that I'm obsessed with, and I met somebody who had this in their van. A new friend of mine. I just made a van friend like a month ago. This guy was an Irish guy who had a German girlfriend. They're living here in France with their van, and they had a recirculating shower. This is something that I have been just so amazed by. Basically, the water comes in the shower head, goes down the plug hole, goes through these series of filters, and then goes back up again. So you get infinite water going through the system. It's an incredible thing. It has a UV filter and a 3-stage filter, and also a thing to remove particles as well. But honestly, it's it's pretty crazy. After talking with him, I thought it was amazing, but he actually removed the thing from his system. He found that the recirculating shower wasn't worth it, and he got rid of it, which is kind of crazy. Emmett and Aoife, how do you get insurance for living on the road? We live in Ireland and need a car to get insurance at the moment. I'm sure you've probably seen, I reckon, my blog already about Irish, all things Irish camper vans. In there, I list all of the Irish camper van insurers. So go in and check that blog. It has all the information that you should need about everybody who does insurance in Ireland. What is the best heating without gas or diesel? And Highland asks, is wood burning stove recommended? So we have a few different ways to do heating in a van. We have, like you mentioned, gas and diesel. We have propane, and we have wood burning stoves. So roughly speaking, there's 3 ways of doing heating. So most commonly, about 70% of people will do a gas or a diesel heater. They can be a little bit challenging to install. You just need to basically splice into the gas line for your holding tank for your vehicle, run a line off to your diesel or your petrol heater, and then it heats up your van. The cheapest version of these so we've got a very cheap version, which is known as the cheap Chinese diesel heater. They're about $250. You can get them on Amazon. But the next level up of a next like real brand is called Planer Autotherm. It costs about $600 for one of these. And then after that, unfortunately, these types of heaters, diesel and petrol heaters, get a lot more expensive. They up $1,000, $2,000. On the other side, then, is the type of heater that I have, which is a Propex, a propane heater. LPG heater, and I love this. So I've installed a full propane system in my van, which powers my heater and powers my stove. Has like lovely brass pipes everywhere. I'm really happy with the job I did, and a big 11 kg refillable cylinder that I can fill up with propane from the side of my van. And propane is I really like it. I have to say, it's a great way to fuel, and it's cheaper than a diesel or a petrol heater. It's about $550, $600 for a Propex heater. And I found their support to be absolutely incredible, I have to say as well. Would I recommend? I'm kind of beating around the bush here. First of all, yes, propane is a great way to go. Be really careful with the propane installation. It can be incredibly dangerous. I did mine myself, but I highly recommend getting a professional to at least look at the system if you install a propane system yourself. Again, I have a very extensive guide going through propane things and all the regulations you should think about. Is a wood burning stove recommended? Honestly, people who have them swear by them. People who have wood burning stoves love them. They look beautiful. I see them all the time here in Chamonix. I see like these. Normally, they'll only go into bigger van conversions. You'll just see the big ones who have them in there. But yes, people who have them do tend to love them. I have no personal experience of them. What type of insulation do you recommend? Michael McGonigal asks. So broadly speaking, I recommend polyiso foam board for most of the insulation, all the flat areas. So the floor, the walls, the roof, all polyiso board. For any hard to get at gaps, I recommend using spray foam, such as inside the ribs of the van, using spray foam or some wool if there's any tight gaps there as well. On top of that insulation, I tend to recommend using Reflectix as well, which is like a foil-backed bubble wrap kind of material. It prevents moisture from getting into your insulation. And though there's some controversy around this exact thing, but I definitely recommend it. So yeah, polyiso board, spray foam, keep it simple. Other than that, though, I did find that the most popular insulation for van conversions in the survey I did last year is recycled plastic, which is really cool. In fact, it's like by far the most popular insulation is recycled plastic. It doesn't have as high an R value as polyiso board does, but it's cheaper and better for the environment. Heather K. Hi, is underfloor heating a good or common practice? I love this. Underfloor heating is so cool. So there's 2 ways in which we can get underfloor heating in a van. One is to use these electrical strips that run on the ground. They can be quite energy intensive and frankly, not probably a good use of your electricity. There is, however, a second way of getting underfloor heating that is tremendously cool. There is a type of diesel/gas heater called a hydronic heater. Relatively new. There's a German company called Eberspacher that makes a hydronic heater, and there's a handful of others too. It's going to become, over the next few years, much more popular in the van conversion world. Check this out. This is what a hydronic heater does. You've been driving around in your van for like 2 hours. You stop. There's loads of heat underneath, in your van in general, underneath the hood. And normally that heat would just go to waste when you hop into the back. What a hydronic heater does is it utilizes all of that excess heat and brings it back inside the van. So you can run your heater in the back of the van off of all the waste heat from when you've been driving. And even cooler than that, if you've got a shower in your van, the water heater will run like for hours off of the waste heat from underneath your engine. So you can basically have infinite hot showers until your engine cools down. And on top of that, you get underfloor heating as like a freebie as well. So you basically get these tubes of pipe that run underneath your floor, and it's filled with hot water from after you stop driving. So that is how you will get underfloor heating. It's amazing. The hydronic heaters are kind of expensive, I'll be honest, but I would love a hydronic heater. I'm going to go back down to the bottom here again. We've got lots of really great questions coming in here. Let me go up so I'm being fair to people. Laurie, I'm going to answer the second half of your question. Are you required to have an address? I answer this in the course as well, and I answer this quite specifically for the US. There's a few things that have a permanent address make it quite difficult. First of all, there's postal services that you can have a remote PO box, which sorts a lot of things out. You can be completely in your van, full-time van life in the United States in this case, for everything, and there's no problem. The one thing where it's sort of interesting, and I encourage you to do your research, is to get health insurance in the United States, being fully nomadic in your van and moving state to state. If you're staying just in your home state in the US, you can get health insurance. In fact, you can get Obamacare, you can get ACA in your home state. But as soon as you leave your home state, it starts to get a little bit more tricky if you're full-time van life. So yeah, essentially, if you're staying in your state, full-time van life, all good on all fronts, even health insurance. If you're leaving, I encourage you either to grab the course and check it out, all the ways that I mentioned in which you can do it, or to do your own research about getting health insurance for this. Nomadhome.com has some good information about how to do exactly this. They basically have health insurance and they roam around full-time, and they just needed to figure out how to do it. Okay, let's go up next. Who we got? Phoenix, is solar panels, more expensive solar panels, a good way to equipment the vehicle and lifestyle? Not in your vehicle, do you think? A little bit confused by the question, but essentially I think I think solar panels are good every day of the week. It saves you money. Having solar panels actually save you money. Not only is it awesome for the environment, but during the summer, I run 100% off solar all of the time. I never need to be in a campsite. I never need to run the engine to fill up with electricity. In a van, there are 3 ways in which we get electricity. We can turn the engine on, we can get solar panels, or we can plug in at a campsite. I run entirely off solar for, say, 8 months of the year. And then the other 4 months, I'll need to run the engine every now and then to charge up my batteries. But I save so much money by simply not having to run my van because I have those solar panels. So solar panels are amazing. I have 400 watts of flexible solar panels. These are cheap, by the way. Now, flexible solar panels are 30% less efficient than monocrystalline solar panels. I would probably still tell most people to go for monocrystalline. I went for flexible because I wanted a really stealthy look on my van. But even with those, I get unlimited electricity during the summer months. Paul Allen, can you use normal house insulation for insulating your van? Yes, except no in some circumstances. Never, ever, ever use fiberglass insulation in a van because the little particles will basically become air bound when the vehicle shakes, so they should never be in a vehicle. Also, rock wool, mineral wool, you should be really cautious of in a van as well for this same reason. There can be airborne particles that come off. So as I said before, the best insulation for a van is really going to be probably polyiso board or spray foam for the gaps, or some recycled plastic for most people. Simon Smith, can you comment on rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive? Which do you think is better and why? I'm a little bit biased. So I think in another life, I was a boy racer. And because I live in snowy places, I quite like a rear-wheel drive car because I can do like little donuts in my Ford Transit. I'm not even joking. But other than that, I actually don't have too much to comment on front versus rear-wheel drive. So for those who want larger battery banks, 100 to 200 kg, I'm assuming that he meant to say 100 to 200 amp hours, what is the best placement? Half on each side of the van? Maybe you did mean 100 to 200 kg. Goodness, a huge battery bank you want for your van. First of all, cool, love it. And second of all, you definitely want to think about weight in your vehicle for a variety of reasons. Having poor weight distribution in your van will cause the van itself, the suspension, to tire on one side. It can cause a lot of vehicle problems down the road, and it can actually be a lot less efficient. You use a lot more fuel when your weight is off to one side than when you're equally balanced. So it'll spend a bit more money. So definitely, if you have like huge battery banks, I would say if you can, try and split them for weight. What you can do if you don't want to do that, because I know people like to keep their electrics, and I would too, all on, in one place. I would say then if you're doing the electrics on one side, let's put all the other stuff on the other side. So let's do all of our water system on the other side. Let's put our gas system on the other side. And so we can just kind of even it up that way if we want to keep our electrics on one side. Judy, is there a stealth way to have a permanently built second bed/bedroom for a winter van? If so, how? Is there a stealth way to have a permanently built second bed and bedroom? So I think the reason you're saying stealth here is because you don't want to have a pop-up on your van, which I kind of understand. If you have a Volkswagen Transporter, the pop-ups still look stealthy. You wouldn't actually know that it's there. But yeah, like a pop-up is a great way to have a second bed. I just get that it may not look stealthy. Ultimately, though, like, again, I'm sorry to keep plugging on my website. I have a whole blog about beds and different bed designs that you can do. Go there and check it out. You might get some inspiration of different ways. I also recommend just going on Pinterest, going on Instagram, and saving your favorite vans that you come across and bed setups can be a great way to get inspired. There is a type of bed called a bed lift system. It's pretty fancy, but you see it every now and then. It's becoming a little bit popular, and it's basically an electric bed system. So the bed is like up in the roof normally, and then you click a button and it'll come down, and it'll come down to like there. And then you can hop up and get into bed. So if you had this type of bed system, this electric bed system, there are guides on how to do it online. You could lower from the roof and then also have beds down below. But yeah, beyond that, definitely check out just some inspiration online. Leslie Wallace, I have a chemical sensitivity. Most people do, I'm sure, but I understand yours is definitely worse than most. Do you include natural/chemical-free options for flooring, insulation, etc. in your course? It's not in the course, I will say. I do talk about some things to be, and I talk about this in general in all of the time, every time I teach van conversions, insulation specifically. There are a few things in vans that are really toxic and not talked about enough in van conversions. And I wish I learned about these things when I was doing my van conversion. So let me tell you some of those. Off-gassing for insulation is really, really bad. So especially with something like spray foam. Spray foam has this thing that aerates it, so it expands a lot. It expands like 100 times. To make it do that, it lets off a bunch of really bad chemicals. So when we're using something like expanding foam, we want to use mask, we want to use eyewear, we want to use gloves, and we want to have loads of ventilation. Keep those doors open for days afterwards. Off-gassing is not just for the spray foam. We want to be sure, especially for the likes of if we're using mineral wool, or if we're using rock wool, if we're using fiberglass, which I said we shouldn't use, making sure that we're always using gloves with it, because it can be a skin irritant. One really important one to know is spray adhesive. So around my van, you'll see, I wonder, can you see it? Yeah, just here. This is carpet. So I carpeted the metal so it looks really nice. It's just like a nice brown carpet. To stick that carpet against the metal, I used spray adhesive. So it's just spray glue that I can spray on. I didn't know at the time just how toxic that is. That spray glue is like one of the most toxic things on earth and has huge correlations with cancer rates. So when we're using spray glue, again, all of the personal protection equipment and lots of aeration. Another thing is when we are finishing our wood, we want to be careful of the type of finishing that we use. There's a specific thing called a VOC that we should be looking out for, a volatile organic compound. If we see that any products have VOCs in them, we need to be really careful in our van conversion that we're using the correct protective wear. Specifically, Danish oil makes all the wood look beautiful. It gives this really nice brown finish. It's like gorgeous looking. I mean, I love how it looks, but it can have a huge amount of VOCs in it. I bought specifically a VOC-free Danish oil. So yeah, there's lots that I could go into here on this topic, and I'm really glad you brought this question up. Not more people should be thinking about this and just being really careful when we're doing certain things that we're caring for our health. And for the environment. I think one thing I learned when I did my van was like the amount of waste made me really sad from doing the van conversion. I mean, I tried to reduce waste as much as I could and be really smart with my materials, but there's no doubt like the plastic packaging and everything made me quite sad. Anyway, let's go down to Jason B. I'm a tall guy, 6'2", and I have very limited room for floor and ceiling insulation. Yeah. What would you recommend as minimal insulation for floor and ceiling for a winter setup? So first of all, get the tallest van you can. I don't know if you've bought your van or not already, but definitely get the tallest van you can. The biggest thing that you need to think about is your sleeping setup. So there are a few different ways when you're tall like you about how you can sleep in a van. First thing that you can do is get something called flares. They're a little bit expensive, but they basically, you cut a hole in the side of your van and you install a flare. And it gives you extra room at your head and at your feet in the bedding area. You see these sometimes, the van just kind of pops out like that. That's one thing you can do. They can be a little bit pricey, but they're a really nice thing to do because you don't have to sacrifice on insulation. The second thing you can do is just simply do cutouts. This is if you're sleeping widthways in your van. So you can do cutouts where you just do less insulation at your head and at your feet so you can still sleep widthways. Or number 3 is what I do. I'm not 6'2", but I have a bed extender, which, can I show you? Oh no, my laptop's on the bed extender. The bed extender, so my setup, first of all, if you can't see it, this table here goes down and everything comes in. And I make the bed, and I have this thing that I place at the end to basically allow myself to sleep the length of the van and give me loads of extra room. So actually with this bed extender, I have a huge king size bed and I just sleep this way. But that's for sleeping, and it's something to consider when you're tall. But even, when you're living in the van, it can be tricky. So the tallest van you can get, definitely do that. And then in terms of insulation, just reduce the insulation. I still recommend polyiso is the best R value you're going to get. You could look at 3M Thinsulate. 3M Thinsulate is very, very good. It's good for the environment. It's a little expensive, but it's a high R value as well, and it takes up less room than polyiso boards. So maybe check out 3M Thinsulate as well for the roof and for the floors. I think the best thing you can do is definitely check out buying the right van from the get-go. TG, kilograms. Yeah, kilograms was for the batteries. That battery setup's huge. Cool. Let's see what else we got. Is there a cheaper alternative than polyiso board? Yes, Paul, there is. I just don't like saying it because of environmental reasons. In fact, there are 2 cheaper versions than polyiso board. There are 3 types of foam board insulation. This polyiso board is the most expensive, but it has the highest R value. It is actually the best. And it's also the best for the environment. It's still not amazing. But there are 2 other types of PIR boards called, I'm going to have to do a quick Google, alternative to polyiso. This is hilarious that I can't remember because insulation I talk about quite a lot, actually. Let's see if I'm going to let that load up for a second. Kingspan is like the name of the company who would do this. And there we go, XPS and EPS, of course. So XPS is the cheapest, and then we have EPS. Extruded polystyrene, it's literally polystyrene, as you would know, XPS. EPS is normally more like pink in color. Both of these are cheaper alternatives to polyiso. They are extremely good insulators when compared to other insulations. And yeah, they're cheap, they're good insulations. They're just horrendous for the environment because of the expanding agent in them. This same thing that we get in spray foam, when it expands out and is bad for us, it's also bad for the environment. So, but yeah, for sure. And actually, most people will go for them. And I will say one other thing about EPS as well, which is better than polyiso, is for your floor. EPS has a better, it's like a crush resistance, basically. So for your flooring, many people will go for EPS because it's less likely to basically squish under your weight. I personally have polyiso on the floor, and I've never found any problems with this. I'm having lots of fun, so I'm going to keep answering questions. I will say, guys, again, if you want to figure out how to build your van on a budget, go check out that QR code or go to the URL there, projectvanlife.com/budgeting course. Just while this webinar is live, right now, you can get the course for $97. Else, it's normally $294. So it's normally a bunch more. But since I'm loving questions and I want to keep that discount available for you guys as much as possible, let's keep going. Okay, what else we got? Can you talk about finding isolation, finding overnight parking? Mary Kane. Yeah, for sure. So there's loads of ways in which we can park for free overnight. Lots and lots and lots of ways. Again, I'm going to keep this a little bit US focused, probably because I think most of the people here are going to be from the States. The national forests in the States are so incredible. They really are. When I traveled all around the States, I just stayed completely for free on national forests. You can stay for extended periods of time completely for free. There's a bunch of websites you can go to find national forests in your area. There's also BLM land as well. Both of these is Bureau of Land Management. It's slightly different from national forests in the USA. And both of these you can stay. I think with BLM land, you can stay for a week, either 3 days or a week before you have to kind of move on. So some people will just, it's called boondocking, staying somewhere for free rather than paying for a campsite. There's also loads of apps you could use. iOverlander is one. In Europe, we use one called Park for Night. Park for Night is an incredible app. If you're from Europe and you're into van life, definitely download this app. You can get loads of places to park for free. Walmart's an interesting one. So yes, historically, Walmart has been the place to go for van lifers to park for free. But I will say they've been clamping down a little bit in the last year. And in fact, just in the last couple months, Walmart have been really clamping down. If you, again, I discussed this so much in the course, all the different ways in which we can live and park for free on the road. I also talk about Walmart, and I mention a calculator, which you can probably get if you Google it too. It's like a Walmart parking lot locator or something. It has all the Walmarts around the United States and Canada, and a green or a red, whether they allow you to stay overnight or not. So it's cool. So I definitely check that out. But yeah, national forests, honestly, it's the way to go. What else we got? Anne Highland. I opted for a Murphy folding bed because I didn't want a high bed on my ankle injury. To do yoga Pilates exercises inside my van on rainy days. Yeah, absolutely. I love the Murphy bed. I think it's really nice. A Murphy bed, for those who don't know, is a bed that's in the side of your van and it just folds down like this. It's a really efficient use of space, and exactly like Anne said, it's a lovely way if you like doing yoga or stretches or a bit of exercise. You can do it inside your van, even with the folding bed. TG, vans can only be so stealth. If I see a van with AC or solar panels or anything at all, it's not stealth. 100%. So I want to tell you guys how I did my stealth build, because stealth was important to me. So there's some ways in which you can make your van stealthy. First of all, the more windows you install on your van, the less stealthy it gets. I have one window, which I think I can get away with. It's a very dark tint, 80% tint, so you can't see in. I have flexible solar panels, so they're completely flush on the roof as well. For all intents and purposes, on the outside, the van just looks like a working vehicle. The one giveaway is the fan that I have. I have a Max Air Max Fan Deluxe on the roof, which is, ventilation is an absolute must. It's a completely non-negotiable in a van, but it is a little bit of a giveaway. Air conditionings are normally much, much bigger, though, for sure. Thank you, Maria, for joining. Maria Bevan, Renault Master. Thank you very much for joining, for sure. Let's see, have we got any more questions? We've got a few more down the bottom. Ricardo, do you think the course is valid enough in a foreign country? He specifically is from Italy. So the course is very much universal in the concepts. Now, I will say there's definitely, specifically with the budgeting course, there's a slight bias on the United States. So I do talk about some things that are more US focused, but absolutely the techniques that I talk about are universal. They're applicable worldwide, be it Ireland, Italy, or anywhere you like. If you are on the fence and you just don't know whether the course is for you or not, as I said, like 100% you can just get the money, like your money back straight away. You can grab the course, have a look through it. If it's not for you, let us know and we'll just give you your cash back straight away. But yes, I do think it's going to be very helpful for you, even though you're not from the States. Okay, we have one more question. Will I just do one more? I think so. One more. We'll see if one more comes up. I might do one more. Okay, Rod. I don't want to have a gas/propane system in my conversion. Is there water heaters using diesel, and what alternatives do you recommend? Yes, for sure. So what's more common indeed? So there are two ways of water heating essentially. Like Rod is saying, we can use propane water heaters or we can use diesel and gas water heaters. Propane water heaters, there's a very famous one that's very cheap called a Camplux. It's $250. It is an outdoor water heater, though some people actually do use them indoors, but it is propane based, super, super simple, and it's a great way. A lot of people will put them on their back door and they have a really nice hot shower based on propane. But if you want to put an indoor shower with a proper system, you'll want a vented water heater. The problem with this Propex, the Camplux water heater, is it's not vented, and propane lets off carbon monoxide when it's burned, so you need to be really careful. So you need to have a vented one if you want to have a proper shower inside. And those vented propane heaters, they can cost like $1,000 or so. Or up to maybe slightly less. So yes, there is an alternative, and that is to go gas or diesel. You absolutely have the option. There's a company called Webasto that's really famous, and there's also a company called Truma that's really famous. Both of these are very high quality. There's definitely a price tag associated with them. I will say, like, I think a great option is if you are already, you want to have a heater in your van and you want to have a water heater, I would go for and money isn't so much of an option problem. I would go for a combi heater. So both Webasto and Truma have a combi heater, which doubles as both a water heater and as a blow heater for diesels. So yeah, I'd recommend checking both of those out. Otherwise, you can just go for like a normal water heater on its own for diesel. Judy, I don't think I could live in my van with no windows, external light all day. Any suggestions? I 100% agree. Definitely. There's no way in hell that I would not have a window in my van. I have one on the side, and I actually have one behind where the laptop is here, separating me and the front of the van. I wanted to be stealthy. And there's another reason why I didn't install a bunch of windows. It's not just for stealth. I knew that I'm a winter guy. I love the mountains in winter. I love the deep, deep cold. Here, where I am, it frequently gets to like negative 20 degrees. The more windows you have, the colder it is by a mile. So I needed to reduce the number of windows simply for heat. But no, really, really definitely install a window. It would be so depressing, I think, to be inside a van without a window. That being said, yes, I have recommendations. I think many people get SADS these days, seasonal depression, and especially during the winter months. And light is a huge, big affecting factor with this. So we want to make inside our van as light as we possibly can. One way to do this is by getting lots of windows. Another way to do this is actually by painting the inside of your van completely white. And this is really pretty as well. It makes everything so much brighter inside, makes you feel better, and the van looks really good as well. So I definitely recommend painting the van white to just increase it. And also just installing lots of lights, specifically lights in the ceiling. I have puck lights going the whole way down. The more overhead light we have, we trick our brain into thinking that it's sunlight, and it really helps with like mood as well. What else we got? Top 3 biggest mistakes you've seen people make with van conversions. Oh, goodness. It's hard to know about mistakes. I like these kind of questions. We can keep going into this kind of thing if we want. I've seen some wacky things, though, mostly on Instagram. I've seen some crazy stuff in real life, too, though. I one time saw somebody who had a bath in their van. And I think, what does a bath take? 200 liters of water? I don't even know. But this person, yeah, they had a bath in their van. Really stupid, I would say. Another one, kind of stupid, kind of cool. They had a full upright piano in their van. So the whole half of their van there was like a piano inside, which is, again, equally cool, equally completely daft, I would say. Biggest mistakes. Okay, to get a little bit more serious with the mistakes so what are some mistakes that you should avoid? Reclaimed wood is a great way to save money on your woodwork. We saw carpentry is a huge expense that people have, so using reclaimed wood is a great way to save money. However, we want to be really careful with where we get this wood from, whether it's pallet wood or whether it's some other type of wood. Why? Well, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, if it's laden with moisture and we screw it in and we put it in place while it's still wet, over time, it's going to wick out that moisture. It's going to dry and it's going to contract. But because we've screwed it in place, it's going to start to form cracks all along the seams. So by doing this, if installing wood while it's still wet, you'll have cracks everywhere in your van and it'll start to fall apart. But even more sinister than that is woodworm. Woodworm is a lovely little larvae that will live in moist wood and frequently is in pallet wood or reclaimed wood. And we need to be really careful. So we want to make sure that we're getting really good reclaimed wood if we're using that. Or we could have problems for sure down the line. Let's keep going with some mistakes to avoid, I think. Actually, it is really important. Moisture is something to really think about in a van conversion. I think about it constantly. I'm living and breathing in this thing all the time and cooking in this thing. I need to be really careful about the moisture inside. So I have a few techniques. Why? First of all, mold. Mold is incredibly sinister. I have in fact, he's my best friend in the Valley, a guy called Rory. He just went back to the UK. He lives in his van full time too, to pull out everything inside of his van. I mean, half his van, he had to pull it out because underneath was mold everywhere. And I kind of knew it from being in his van before. He had a lovely van, but he just had a terrible mold problem because he didn't deal with humidity correctly. So we need to think about how to deal with humidity. So there's loads of ways. And I really can't stress this enough. Deal with humidity, especially if you're doing winter van life. It's the single biggest concern that you're going to have. That and keeping your electrical batteries charged, probably. Ventilation is incredibly important. I have a fan here, very, very good fan just here. And this fan needs to be able to pull air from somewhere. You can't just have one fan because there will be no airflow. So either you need to crack open a door, you need to have a window that slides open, or even a second vent at the back of the van, or maybe some sort of a little thing a flap that opens in the floor as well to allow the circulation of air. That's the first thing to do. Second thing to do is to keep it as warm as you possibly can inside the van at all time, because hot air holds a huge amount more moisture than cold air. I've come up with these weird techniques that I do now to try and reduce humidity, where I'll get the van as hot as possible, collect all the moisture that I know is around the van, and then open the door and just let all the hot air out. You start doing weird shit, pardon my French, when you're in the van. But then and how does mold form? It forms specifically and especially when moisture gets into our insulation, especially if we have there are some types of insulation that are more prone to it, let's say, than others. And so we need to check. If you check out my insulation guide, I have a big sort of super guide. There's about 10,000 words in it or something. I do a lot of study into the different types of insulations on thevanconversion.com. And I talk about which ones are mold resistant and which are not. I will say sheep's wool is particularly good for mold resistance. Sheep are creatures that are built to actually be able to get wet and then wick off that moisture when the air dries out. So it never gets moldy, but other insulations are not so good. Anyway, yeah, so not dealing with moisture is one big mistake for sure to avoid. And I'm going to probably move on from this now. There's loads, though. I love that question. Okay, what else we got? You can get a Chinese diesel heater that is a combi, says Yogi Beard. Thank you for sharing that information. That's really, really great information. So as I mentioned, a Chinese diesel heater normally be about $250. By the sounds of it, we can get one that's a blow heater and a water heater as well. That's excellent. And I didn't actually know that. I would like to use a tankless water heater. Yep. So Michael, pretty much everybody in a van who has a water heater will be using a tankless water heater. It's extremely rare, if not never, that we will use a tanked water heater. Certainly an electric tanked water heater, because it takes they're just not commonly used. For sure, tankless is the way to go. Okay. I think I'm just going to do two more, guys. We're going to do Michael's, and then I see a comment from Anne there as well, which I'll just have a quick look at as well. So Michael says, do you use some sort of cooking vent? So yeah, for sure. So I just want to talk about cooking specifically. I started tracking carbon dioxide levels in my van last year after getting a little tiny obsession with carbon dioxide. Because I watched a documentary and realized just how bad high CO2 levels are for us. We get extremely sleepy, and it actually is just simply not good for us, but especially it detracts from our attention span, has loads of downsides. And I noticed, so I tracked it for a couple of weeks in the van about when I got high CO2 levels in the van. One was, so if I close all the vents overnight, I find that the CO2 went up to like 5,000 parts per million or whatever it is, which is very high. That's like 10 times higher than normal or something like that. So even overnight, even during the winter now, I sleep with a crack open in the vent to keep the CO2 down. And related to your question is while cooking. It is so important. This was the biggest thing that I noticed when I was tracking the CO2 levels. Was my cooking, especially on the propane hob, is that I need, you absolutely must have ventilation while you're cooking. So this means turning the fan on, and that's not good enough on its own, because I noticed when I turned the fan on, I didn't have a crack in the door, that the CO2 levels stayed really high. So you need the crack in the door and the vent on to allow that to go through and to cook safely. So yeah, my specific fan, I'm just such a fan of it. It's the Max Air Max Fan Deluxe. It has, you can suck air in and push air out, so it's an extractor and it cools you down. It has 10 different speeds, and what makes this fan really, really cool is you can cook in the rain. It has a rain lid on it, so you can cook in the rain, because most of the other fans don't have that feature. I love this specific one. It is a bit pricey, and there are cheaper fans you can go to for sure. Okay, let's check out what else we got. Yep. Carbon dioxide in a closed space can kill you. Not as fast as carbon monoxide, though, but for sure it can. Guys, I think that's all the questions. And I'm probably happy enough. We've just hit the 2-hour mark. I have had an absolute blast. My throat is starting to go a little bit raw. So it's probably a good time to stop. Again, if you fancy it, no pressure, but go check out the course. You can just go to the landing page, have a little look and see, because that $97 price is about to end as soon as this webinar ends. So in the next few minutes. So normally the course is $294. It's down for $97 just for webinar viewers. And yeah, you can grab it on the website there. Other than that, guys, thank you so much. Really appreciate everybody who showed up there. Such great questions. I thoroughly enjoyed this Q&A. I'm definitely going to do one of these again. And yeah, hit me up on either through Project Vanlife or through my own website, thevanconversion.com. If you want to chat, I always reply to my emails. Any questions you got, feel free to shoot them to me. I'm more than happy to help. Cool. All right, amigos. Hasta luego. I will see you at the next webinar. Catch you soon. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.